So, welcome back, everybody, to the 13 Roses interviews. And thank you to all those people that have been listening to these wonderful ladies speak about their spiritual experience and their relationship with the sacred sexuality. And the feedback that we've been getting from the interviews has been really, really endearing. And so, without much further ado, we go to the lovely Chelsea, who has been participating on the course with me. And it's been such an honour and a privilege to have Chelsea on this course. She is already a master in her own area and working deeply with women already. So, without further ado, I will introduce Chelsea and get her to just tell us a little bit about who she is and what she's actually doing at the moment as she collided with this course.
Oh, thanks for that introduction, Colette. Hi, I'm Chelsea. I live on the Wirral and I am a somatic movement educator. I run workshops to take people into deeper spaces within their bodies, and I'm also a yoga teacher trainer. And I run a lot of add-on skills for yoga teachers already, so that they can keep sharpening their toolbox and keep growing themselves. And my own practice is based in shamanism, so I kind of weave all the kind of shamanic practices into what I do, so that everything is held in a sacred space for people to explore themselves and develop themselves. And I run the work that I do out of Earth Space, which is a studio that I actually dreamed of just before the pandemic and created during the pandemic. And it's a beautiful space which kind of opens out into the woods at the back. So we've got trees and birds, and it's a lovely space where we can practice outdoors as well as indoors.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I've seen that, and I do prompt the listeners to go and have a look. We'll include links to all of this so that you can have a look at Chelsea's beautiful space that she operates at. And the Wirral's in the United Kingdom, so those of you that are venturing over there or have an interest in any of the things that Chelsea offers, we'll make sure you're able to see that. But I was just, Chelsea, we've got a very similar journey on our paths. I started off in yoga and somatic, and I was trained in shamanism. And there's just all these worlds collide, don't they? They just collide. There's no one path. And Chelsea's got like a similar background to me. We're very similar kind of women in that we're animus driven, and we've held spaces, we've opened up spaces. And that's what is really come across about, Chelsea in the work that we've been doing is a space holder. And she is someone that is always constantly seeking to be impregnating her whole teachings with new concepts, new teachings. It's like different bolt-ons, isn't it, we put into our work, Chelsea? So can you explain how the sacred sexuality came into you and how you feel it will, fuse with everything you already do?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting actually how I even came to the training. So, an email from you had landed in my inbox when I was just finishing some research and doing a dissertation for a master's degree in dance and somatic well-being. And it's so funny because it was all about my relationship to my heart and womb, so that I would kind of pull out all the symbols and the repeating motifs in my life at the time that were directing me to get more connected with the divine feminine, with the sacred feminine. And then your email landed and I thought, wow, well, this is just kind of like the next step for me to kind of go into. So, the work has really helped me to kind of work more with the sacred feminine. As you said, I'm naturally much stronger in my animus. Yeah. And so, just to kind of work on that other part of myself has been really, really important for me.
Yeah, and I want to speak more on that. We're two animus women, so let's chat about that. And for the listeners that don't know what that means, it's kind of the masculine energy. In psychology, like the first people to term this was Carl Jung, who said that the animus was the masculine energy within a woman, and the anima was the feminine energy in a man. But as psychology developed, psychologists realised that both of these energies live within people, that a woman carries animus and anima. And the animus is like the masculine driven energy. And I know how that developed in me over time through, the patriarchal society and not feeling safe as a woman and all of those things. So how do you feel that animus energy like manifested in you? why? And I'll go into more detail about that and ask you some more questions. Let's start off there.
Yeah, well, I think, it's kind of, a lot of this stuff, it's based in your childhood experiences, isn't it? And then relationships that you have throughout your life. And I feel that, I've had to kind of be very strong in my life so that, all these different plates that I've been spinning. So, I've been kind of a single mum for the last kind of nearly 7 years now. So, you know, having children and lots of responsibilities and working and running a business and everything, this kind of real need and feel to be in control of your life. If I let any plates go, what's going to happen? Have I got people there to pick it up for me? I didn't always feel that I did. So I think this is where it's kind of come from for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women will really resonate with that. Me too, just stepping into a man's world in a career and doing degrees like you, like further education, masters, postgraduates. It's a pretty competitive man's world. And I stepped in and I had to step into my animus and suppose to survive my childhood also.
Yeah.
So there are many pluses. You've just shared some really positive things about animus energy. It allows like a woman like you to establish a business, to have a family, to juggle all the plates. What else would you say was the positive thing about animus energy in a woman?
I would say, we're kind of very dynamic women, so we action things, we get things done. Um, and I think we're always ready to take on a challenge as well. And I know for myself, I'm always prepared to take a risk on things. So yeah, I think that's kind of one of the other positives really, is kind of being that natural risk taker.
Lovely. That's a good key, isn't it? The risk taker. So we could, like people that are listening will be able to see that the animus energy, it might play out different in you, and the risk taker is, I would absolutely attribute that to my animus. But the thing is as well is the animus can be very detrimental to us if it possesses us. And I have totally can hold my hands up that I have been possessed at times by my animus. So what for me that looked like just complete control, needing complete control at all times. Otherwise, I'd feel like I wasn't safe. So how would you say that the animus may have been detrimental to you at times in your life?
Yeah, I think the same really, kind of being in control in some situations, but then actually on the flip side, I've often found that, my wild side plays out a lot as well. And I've taken myself into such risky places that I've made myself unsafe,
Yeah.
in relationships. And, that comes with a price as well.
No, no, totally agree. And that same with me, in possession, sometimes you can do really ballsy things that are, like you say, very, very risky. So the things that are actually the animus is trying to do is trying to keep your feminine safe, is actually putting your feminine more at risk.
Yeah.
So I think for sacred sexuality for me really allowed me to like get under the animus and into my sacred sexual self, which was a lot more feminine, a lot less lusty, a lot less like sexual drive driven. So
Yeah.
how are you experiencing that with getting into the anima and the sacred sexuality?
I think, one of the big keys for me has been learning to have more respect for my body and, who or how I allow my body to be in a sexual space with somebody. And, just to be more nurturing and nourishing and caring for myself more, actually, rather than kind of caring for everybody else. I've kind of turned the lens more on myself.
Yeah, yeah, it's important, is it? I think when we're space holders and we're caring for others, it's always like majority turned outwards, and it's really important, isn't it, that we get the space to be able to turn inwards. Has it been difficult, like putting certain, like when we delve into the unconscious, we start to like prize up patterns that we weren't aware of? How difficult has that been, and what's that made us you feel like?
Oh yeah, God, it's been really uncomfortable
Yeah.
time. Really uncomfortable because obviously we're working with the shadow side here, and bringing up all sorts of feelings around shame and guilt and rage and all these other parts of ourselves, and just putting them out there on the table for them to be witnessed. You know, one of the things, Colette, that I've really loved about this training is the forum space. I mean, at first I resisted it because I'm not, you know, I'm not massively into technology and going and typing on forums and things, but I kind of got used to that quite quickly, and actually being witness and having yourself and the other women, you know, kind of notice things that I'm not noticing about myself perhaps, has been a challenge, but has been really quite transformative and has really helped me to grow and learn more.
I think that's really important. Same for me when I got into forum, where I remember the first teacher said, right, we're doing this online. I was like, what? You know, it feels really uncomfortable, but then I understand the psychology of it. It's that space that you can actually come and go. It's like the room you go into to share things, and you can jump out that room and go, okay, I've said that, and I'm just going to let that settle, and then I'm going to go back in later when I'm ready to see what the responses are, and I can take what I want, I can leave what I want, and these women are actually allowing me to see aspects of myself that I haven't seen before. And that was key for me. Like in the psychology clinical work I've been doing, it shows us that, you know, that space that is been made there allows us to go in and share things we wouldn't ever share anywhere else, and probably not face to face, because it's even harder when we face to face someone.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we're sharing at the minute, we're in the middle of sharing our shames, aren't we? And it's really, it's difficult. You can see at first people like hold back, and then suddenly you can see there's a fluidity, and everyone just starts pouring the things in there. How liberating does that feel to do that?
But you know what? It feels really amazing. And I mean, as soon as somebody opens up a door, a gateway, and admits something, then everybody else, you know, tends to say, oh, do you know what? I see that as well. You know, I've done that as well. I resonate with that. So it does. It's kind of like we keep kind of opening these gates up for each other. And it feels lovely. It feels very supportive and, you know, not judgmental. And, you know, it feels very held and very safe.
Yeah, and it's so lovely, isn't it? To things that you've held on to, and you just pour in there, and then a woman goes, "Yeah, I've done that," and then you just realise how similar we all are, really, truly. You know, all the things we've done are like the same, but with different stories, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely.
So when we're working in those aspects, this really helps people that have listened, because I had somebody say to me from the interviews, they were aware that they were working with a teacher that was doing some shadow work with them, but whenever the spiky kind of thing came, they wanted to leave. So can you explain that? I mean, you do all the somatic and what does it feel like to have part of you like probed that has been hidden inside of you that you've not wanted to admit yourself? What's that process for you like? And you can explain that in any way that you feel comfortable, because I know our listeners have different varied experience. So I'd love to hear it from your approach. Like, how does that feel when something gets picked up on?
Yeah, I think, you know, initially sometimes I'll read a comment, say from you, and then I kind of go, oh, and like my defense mechanism goes straight up and I think, oh, I'm not sure about that. And then I leave it and then I read it again. And it's interesting because what I've realized is that I actually read things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then when I've reread it, I thought, oh no, actually it's starting to land now. So I kind of let it process, and it can feel painful. It really can. But you know, that's okay. And I know that then there's something there that needs to be shifted. So then it's kind of feeling whatever emotion it is that's coming up with that information, and then, you know, to work through it. What do I need in this moment? Do I need to, you know, give myself some touch? Do I need to breathe in a different way? Do I need to go and move and roll around my studio? What do I need? Do I need to write something? Do I need to draw? And so I kind of action it in that way, and then think about, well, okay, how can I, you know, maybe stop this from happening again in the future? What can I do to keep myself, I mean, in my case in particular, it's about keeping my sovereignty.
Yeah.
You know, how can I do that going forward? So it kind of gives me this wonderful kind of process to work through.
Thanks for that. That's really important for people to hear, that it is a process. It really is. I mean, my analyst, I say to him, love you, hate you when I leave, because I love and hate him, you know, at the times. And isn't it funny projection? Like when he says something that really is spiky for me, and I work in a very similar way to you, I kind of go like, do I need to physically move this out? Is there emotion under there? And first of all, I want to say to him like, screw you, like that isn't true about me. And that defense is really natural. It's really natural because it shields us. It just protects us in that moment. And then if we give the time for the processing, we then can begin to unpick that and start to say, like, where can I grow from that? What do I want to take on from that right now? And what don't I? Because obviously you don't have to either. You know,
Yeah.
there's only so much sometimes you can deal with or you want to go into. But that's what I think it's important when we're working in these forum places, is that we understand each other, that we're all going through these cycles. And even, you know, you as the guide, me as the guide, I'm not immune to that. I'm there with you. I go through the same process. You know, I'm defensive. I have to move ego, you know, because we're human, no
Yeah.
matter how much work we've done. And that just allows a safety in a group. And you've probably experienced that with women that you work with as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But for me, if somebody pushes your buttons, there's a learning there. There's a gift in there for me. It just might not feel like it at the time, but you know, I think taking time to be self-reflective is so important as to why somebody's just said this to me. You know, what is that about me? What is it within me? Why am I feeling this way? You know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, you know, I've been in spaces with women where have held deep physical, sexual trauma and often taken the role of the perpetrator, in that I have purposely tried to trigger something to allow that eruption to come. And I've been sworn at, and you know, I could see through this woman's eyes that she thought I was him, and allowing that space, you know, just for her to break through. Literally, I held her as she broke through
Yeah.
and held her after. And there was there's a deep healing in that. And as space holders, we're used to that. You know, people come in saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to be embarrassed if I kick off," or if I. It's like we expect that. We know that. We know that's part of the healing, to go bugger off, like this isn't me, or the defense come in. You know, we've seen it in the group, and it's all okay. The women have just stood back, held space, and
Yeah.
allowed that process to carry on. So people are probably thinking, like, all of this like emotional and movement stuff that's coming up within us, how is that related to sacred sexuality? How would you describe that relationship?
Um, I think it's a process, isn't it? It's a process, but what we have to keep remembering is about the word sacred and what that kind of means to us, and it will mean something slightly different to everybody, I guess. But for me, it's about putting all of this work, even when it feels really uncomfortable, even if I'm feeling angry. You know, it's there for a reason. It's there for a devotional reason, to myself, and you know, and to spirit as well. So I'm kind of trying to place all the work with reverence, really, and that's you know, that's why I'm here. It's about kind of learning more about my relationship with spirit.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. That's what it all boils down to at the end of the day, making that wherever there's woundings and pain, we disconnect from spirit, from God, from creator, however we want to call it, and we know that these wounds separate us. So as we start to heal them, we refuse, we reconnect, don't we? And that sacred sexual matter, I mean, we know this with shamanism. That is the beginning of everything. It's the earth, it's the fire, it's the water. That the sex is contained within everything. So when we're moving our bodies, we're aware of the energy. And I think we've just lost, haven't we? It's like connecting dots back to sacredness.
Yes.
Whereas my journey had always been like spiritual, but I hadn't connected my sex to sacredness. That fusion, can you explain that? Like what it's like pulling these little bits back and connecting them back to the sacred?
Yeah. Again, well, you know, at the time when I began this training course, interestingly, I began a new relationship as well. So, and it is a conscious relationship, which is new for me. And you know, we have a communication with each other that's really wonderful, so that he understands my needs for sacred sexuality and that part of me to be held in that space. And so, you know, that's one way it's kind of pulled in for me, is through now having a partner who understands these needs for me. Whereas in the past, that's not been, you know, part of our relationship. Yes, sex has been there, but it's not been placed within a sacred, within it, you know, with a sacred lens. So that's really made a huge difference to my sexual relationship.
I was going to ask about that because it was just such divine timing, wasn't it? You entered this space and this guy walked in your life. And yeah, I wanted to just, you mentioned like communication, but for people that are listening that haven't had this experience of being in this kind of like work, body of work, and then meeting someone,
Mm.
how is that dynamic operating? What would you say the main differences in this relationship are because it's conscious?
I think we are more respectful of each other's needs, and we have the conversation about what it is that we need or what we're finding challenging, and just giving each other space and for it to flow. And you know, it's like this is my need. It's putting firmer boundaries down in some ways. And you know, for me in my past, I've had relationships where boundaries have not been held well enough, and they've, you know, been unhealthy and toxic relationships. So for me, that bit has been really, really important.
And how has he responded to that? What's he feeling from these places that are working and becoming conscious?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I was very clear with him from the outset about, you know, what I was doing and how my life was flowing. And, you know, he was really up for the challenge as well, to kind of, you know, be by my side on this journey. And yeah, you know, it's really working for the both of us. It's not perfect by any means. You know, we have our ups and downs, but it's working. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ups and downs are natural, aren't they? Really natural. I found that with my partner is that the ups and downs now become more of a project for us to work on. We can both reflect on them and say, okay, what do I own in that? Where am I projecting? Whereas that wasn't there in my other relationships to be able to do that. So we have like this language that we can kind of say, okay, what do you own? What do I own? Where was I at fault? Where were you at fault? And it just becomes a deepening into the relationship, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. In other words, you know, we just take time to discuss it and to work through stuff. So
And we can't fail to mention, like you know, the lover and the mother in you. So, how do you feel that this is impacting, you know, family life and what you do with the family?
yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, I'm just kind of really noticing all the time about obviously my own behavior, my past behavior, and what I might be demonstrating for my own children as well. And to be in a loving relationship where there's a lot more respect for each other, I think is, you know, a wonderful opportunity for my children to see that and to see how happy I am with that. And, you know, in turn, my relationship with them is easier as well.
That's a massive thing, isn't it? Because that relationship is like the symbolic, you know, motif, like you said before, of the work that you've been doing and the healing that you've been doing. And yeah, I don't think we can actually know the full influence of that on our children, and it's very healing for them as well to see that when we've, you know, I'm like you, I know there are situations that haven't been nurturing and healing for my child, and so being in this situation allows for that healing to occur, and they can see what relating should look like and what like two people behaving with each other should look like as well.
Absolutely. And you know, I feel like I've been having more conversations with uh, my children who are teenagers, you know, just at opportune moments, just, you know, to be able to talk to them a bit more about the sacredness
Yeah.
of sex and sexual experience and relationships. You know, they don't want to hear a huge amount, of course.
Oh no, no.
But if I find an opportunity where I can just like pop something in and have a little conversation, and it has happened with both of them, and it's been, you know, it's been a really wonderful opportunity. And, you know, by me becoming more aware of this stuff, it's also meant that they will also benefit from that as well, and hopefully not make mistakes that I've made.
Yeah, it's a lovely space for me to actually say these are the mistakes I made, and it's not like we don't want them to make mistakes. Of course, they've got their own journey with their mistakes too. But if we can just impart where we felt we went wrong, and try to lead them as best as we can into a more connected way of relating, I think that's like the gem really out of this work, seeing that have an impact. We still hold space where we talk about, like you say, there's only so much he wants to listen to, and then he's like, okay, enough.
Yeah.
And then, like where we've got it wrong, where we've maybe been in an argument and I haven't listened and I'm in my animus, and then been able to sit down to my son because of the reflection and say, I was completely out of order then and I shouldn't have spoke to him in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learnt more not to fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
They're teenagers and they, have the hormones are raging and this, that, and the other. And sometimes when they come in and they might, be upset about this, that, and the other, it's not about me. It's not, they're not upset with me, even though they might be having a go at me. And then just to give them that space more, to just step back and just to kind of be more in my feminine energy, just to think, no, I'll give it space. I won't say anything. But, part of me underneath just wants to fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
But, I'm learning more and more to kind of be kind of in control of that, really, and just to allow the softer side of myself to come through.
Yeah, and that I think for me that's understanding that we have these traits and that they're not just going to disappear. We don't just become Buddhas and peace loving, whatever, living in the Himalaya. We're dealing with real life situations that will trigger us, that will bring up all of that fire in us. And that was for me. I was doing work years ago that I thought could, release that from me. Eastern philosophy made like, if you're angry, it's bad. If you've got these feelings, they'll disappear one day. They don't disappear. You just learn to manage them within your psyche, don't you? And that I think really helps me be more human, more connected to people. When I was teaching from a different place of, I'm on my way to be not angry, I must have been really separate from people. So can we just want to speak about just, allowing your humanism into the work that we do, I do and that you do. What does that look like, allowing our humanism?
Oh, do you know what? It's like just allowing yourself to make the mistakes, to not be perfect. I remember reading Marion Woodman's book, Addiction to Perfection, and just going, oh my God, that's me. And just allow myself to just go, it's okay to be more vulnerable. It's okay to actually break down a bit every now and again, and, just not be this strong woman all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really important for me, is that the strong woman piece. It's good to be a strong woman, but the polarity is that we also are weak, and that's okay too. It's okay, otherwise we become men. We need to revel in that feminine, emotional, soft sensuality that we all carry as women, that we guard in, because we often are perceiving we're not safe. So if you were to just speak on the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself or that you've learned within the course, what would that be?
Oh gosh, it's been so much. So much. I think really digging under the roots, with the shadow self. I think just really keep digging and just getting underneath everything. I think that's kind of been one of the biggest ways that I've transformed, really. And just being very clear in my boundaries more, particularly around my sexual energy and how I might have misused that in the past, or might have been over sexual in certain ways, which is unsacred. So just being kind of stronger with that, and also learning to say no, if something feels unhealthy to me, to be able to say no to that.
Yeah, and that's really what I've witnessed, this like strong, amazing, like sexual wild energy that's in you, that's now being fused with the sacred. I just can't wait to see what you do with this. So what are you going to do with this? How is this going to be incorporated in your work, and what are you looking at offering? And people that are listening, I'm sure they're dying to go, what's she going to do with this? And what's So I know you've not finished yet. We've still got some time left, but what's
Yeah.
your ideas about that at the moment?
Well, I think again, because I've embodied these practices myself now, I can only kind of work from where I am at and what I've learned. I can't kind of be teaching anything else. So I think really helping women to maintain their sovereignty, um, in relationships, and teaching women more about self-care practices, nurturing yourself as an act of worship and devotion to yourself and to spirit as well. And what I will be offering later in the year is a new. I mean, I run women's circles already, women's shamanic yoga circles. I've got 2 that I run every week, but I will be offering a new one that will be based around the sacred sexual self, which will combine, practices such as the self-touch practices, which have been wonderful for me, body movement to express emotion and creative expression, sharing and drawing and things like that. So it'll be quite creative. There'll be deep meditations in there as well, but also body movement.
Amazing. That sounds amazing. And they physical circles, Chelsea, where you live?
Actually, I'm going to be doing them online, because what I've learned from doing this work with you is that because they're very intimate practices, some of this stuff, actually I feel that in some ways I've been able to open up even more because of the being in your own space and maybe being off camera. So we'll be able to do some of this work together, for example the self-touch work perhaps, but with cameras off, and in that space together.
I totally agree that that's just like a beautiful offering to be able to come in and do this from your own home with, like you say, the laptop shut. You're just being guided with your voice. What a beautiful opportunity. So we will make sure that your links and your contact details are here underneath this recording so people can find out when they're going to be. Like you said, would it be later on in the year?
Yeah, be later on in the year.
And I'm quite sure that you're already, this can't help but seep through your skin, can it? With the work you're already doing as you're embodying it, you're probably, with what you're already doing, people are getting a flavour of it coming through you anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, in the women's circles that I run already, which are a combination of in studio, online, I do them both together. I'm kind of not afraid to touch on the sexual and the sensual more, which I have been doing anyway, but I've got more confidence with that now as well, to hold that space for the women.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it has been an honour to have you in the group. Like, I've seen you completely transforming, and I'm sure you'll continue to do that. So thank you very much for the interview, Chelsea. And again, just to reconfirm that all Chelsea's details will be available at the bottom of this recording, and you can also inbox us because she will be tagged into this recording too. So thanks a lot, Chelsea. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Colette.